What if your life felt guided? Like you weren't constantly questioning yourself, but instead you trusted what you felt. Inside Aligned and Abundant, the Soul Shine Collective, we work with the energy of the new and full moons so you can move through your life with clarity, alignment, and ease. This isn't about doing more. It's about coming home to yourself. Twice a month, we gather for powerful workshops, meditation, and real connection so you can deepen your intuition and actually live in alignment with your energy. If you've been feeling that pull for something deeper, this is your space. You can join us for just $33 a month. This is the founder's rate for the first 25 members, and you can cancel anytime. Link is in the show notes. Welcome to Aligned and Abundant. On today's episode, I have a very special guest. Her name is Chrissy Janiga, and she is going to talk to us all about how her relationship with alcohol and manifestation changed when she was making some aligned decisions. Chrissy, thank you so much for joining me. Our paths crossed, I want to say, in January, and there was something about talking to you that really inspired me to reach out and ask if you would be on my podcast. I know you had mentioned that you have written a book, and the title just caught my attention. I wanted to hear more about your story, and so I'm so excited to have you on today's podcast. Thank you so much for saying yes. I appreciate you. And what I really want to get into first off is tell me a little bit about who you are as a person and what do you do?
Well, thank you for having me on. I'm super excited. So I'll just give like the basics a little bit about who I am in my day-to-day life. I am divorced. I'm a mom. I have a 10-year-old boy. I have two cats. I actually work full-time. I'm a social worker, and I'm also an alcohol-free coach and author. I've written three books. Two are children's books. And then my book about alcohol-free, it's called Soul-Led Sobriety. A lot of what I talk about is, you know, yes, those who remove alcohol, it's not serving them, but I talk a little bit about it in a deeper sense, like we're meant to be in this path, that it really opens up doors that we weren't even expecting. And ultimately, I don't ever shame anybody for drinking. I have friends that drink. Like, my mission isn't to like tell everyone to stop drinking, but it's also to influence those that need to be influenced and help those. And also, even my son, as he ages, giving him different ways to cope and different ways to connect with people that you don't need alcohol for that, and giving him a different perspective that I think will be really valuable as he gets older.
I love that. And I agree. We're not shaming anyone who does enjoy picking up a drink. I'm not totally alcohol free, but what I have noticed is that the more spiritual I became, the less I want to drink. So I'm really curious to hear like how you have seen that for yourself as well. And with that, I also grew up with my father is basically, I would say, a functioning alcoholic. There's not a day where he doesn't have a beer in his hand, and to different degrees. It might be a weekend where he's totally getting sloshed, or it's just he came home from work and wants a beer. And this has been my entire life. Even when he's coming over to my house now as an adult, he's like, how many beers are in the fridge? And he literally
Mm.
travels with like his lunchbox. So I think that there are people who need to hear the call that it might be time to release alcohol from their lives, but respectfully, everyone has their own journey. And, the tools and the resources can be offered and available, but ultimately, every person has to make their own choice. And so, I'd love to get into your relationship with where you started to really wonder what would be different for you if you weren't having alcohol in your life?
Yeah, so, and we'll definitely, I know we'll touch more about the spirituality a little bit later too, because I think that's a really important thing to discuss, especially with intuition and manifestation and all those things. But where I started questioning my relationship with alcohol, and now this was like 5 years before I even quit drinking, I started having consequences. I wasn't drinking every day. I did not want to drink every day, but it seemed to be something I did on a lot of the weekends once I moved in with my, at the time, husband, because a lot of people around us drank. It's what they did on the weekends. We were big boaters, and that's just the boating population. And so for me, it started off like not a big deal, and then it kind of progressively got worse. So I started noticing, like, definitely would binge drink, but like sometimes I'd black out, and I did not mean to black out. I would start noticing health consequences, nothing crazy because I still took care of myself, but as I got older and older, it affected me differently. My sleep was off. I even remember like sweating in the middle of the night when I would drink wine. And I like working out. I enjoy taking care of myself, and it just didn't align with that value. So that's kind of where I started to kind of question, like, I don't like this. But the thing that kind of kept me stuck and, a little bit maybe over 5 years was the fact that I could not identify as an alcoholic. I could not identify what I thought of a problematic drinker looked like. And because of that, I didn't actually know I could quit. I know that sounds crazy, but this was before Instagram had sober coaches and before there was multiple options. I thought AA was the only option. And at that time, I didn't have enough insight to understand the things that were going on. I also didn't have enough insight to understand if I did black out, which wouldn't happen all the time, which was also why I think it kind of kept me stuck because I'm like, see, I'm fine. Because I didn't do that all the time. But what happened sometimes if I blacked out, number one, have that regret, shame, and that just that terrible feeling and being so hungover. But what would happen is I would get really emotional sometimes and do things out of character. And now, with being over 3 years alcohol free, I was like, oh my gosh, I really wasn't addressing my needs. I wasn't really understanding what I needed. And it would come out, kind of like a obnoxious way, not how I would ever deal with it if I was sober. So that was kind of the beginning of what I started, questioning things with alcohol. What led me to kind of just decide to stop or to take a break. Let's put it that way. I took a break first. Was really, I just kept getting emotional when I was drinking. I was very disconnected with my partner at the time. So I think I'm not blaming that, but I'm just saying I think that was what, some of the emotions that were getting created. I wasn't dealing with the things I needed to deal with in my life. So it got to the point where I'm like, okay, I think I really do need to take a break, or really I need to stop drinking. And I even wrote in my manifestation journal in 2022, I did Gabby Bernstein's her manifestation challenge, and I wrote, change my relationship with alcohol.
That's amazing. I think you bring up a lot of good points. One being that you don't know if you have a problem if it's not identifiable as a problem. So when you bring up like I didn't think I would need AA, it's like, yeah, like when I would drink too, like I wouldn't think that it was a big enough problem, right? And I feel like as a society we've become so much more informed of what is healthy and what is not healthy. There's always that questionnaire at the doctor's office. How much do you drink? Is it social? I always remember I would check off socially. And so it's kind of curious to see the evolution of how we process things. I know for myself, when I was going through my divorce with my first husband, my girlfriends, my support team were like, oh, just have a glass of wine. And it just reminds me of what you just said. Like, I was really just numbing out the emotions and not dealing with them and, putting like a quick fix to it. But the feelings were still there in the morning. So it's finding that healthy balance and not necessarily using alcohol, in my opinion, as a crutch to avoid life or amplify life, right? Some people just love the feeling of the freedom that it gives them. Like they step out into a little bit of a different personality, perhaps. And so that can be rewarding. That can be something that gets them excited. And then you get on that repetitive pattern. So I think that's such a really great point that you brought up. That's that awareness.
Yeah, absolutely. I also look forward to drinking because although I didn't have the insight at the time, because parts of my life weren't giving me what I needed. Tony Robbins, and this is in my book too, talks about the 6 different human needs, and one of them is growth contribution. And I don't think I had enough of the growth component. I was just scratching the surface. I mean, I was in my job. I didn't hate my job, but I don't think it was giving me what I needed for growth. So I really feel like alcohol replaced that with something exciting on the weekends, on Fridays. And like I said, I didn't drink every day of the week. So this is how I justified, all the things, even though I thought about not drinking a lot. And I hear this from so many people. Okay, well, I'm gonna have some water. I have to work out the next day. They kind of like just put all these like different things. And I always say to people, and now reflecting back on my journey, is if this is taking so much mental energy, you're putting so much energy in like to drink, how to not get hungover,
Yeah,
and then
like the repair
yeah, and
stage
then
after.
yes, and then
Yeah.
repairing, like you're not being present. Like you're not being present. It's mentally exhausting in moderation, which I'm not a fan of. I mean, some people sure can have a glass of wine here and there, and like there are people that can do it. But I think it's a fine line because, like you mentioned, it's very much justified in our society, like especially mommy wine culture. It tells women you need this number one, and it's expected. And so then when somebody develops maybe a problem or becomes dependent on it to some degree, it's like kind of confusing because then you're told that you have a problem, there's something wrong with you. And when you hear all these messages over and over again, you honestly believe them. You believe you need wine. You believe it's doing something for you, even if it's not a conscious thought. Because I see this too, is like when I was trying to quit, what was really hard for me was one, I couldn't say forever in the beginning. It was very hard. But for me, it was the FOMO. Like, how am I supposed to function? And I think this is what happens is people try to quit and they're like, well, how am I supposed to go on vacation? And people don't realize they become emotionally dependent on alcohol. Not just you don't have to be physically dependent, you become emotionally dependent. And I'm not saying, oh, you're a problem. I'm saying this is what we're taught. And so when we quit, it's why there's this like push pull where it doesn't make sense. Like, why? And then your nervous system, like you mentioned, learns that alcohol is the go to for the coping strategies, the numbing strategies. So your brain, your body just flips to that. And so many people are like, why can't I stop drinking? What's wrong with me? And they don't realize it's actually kind of complicated.
Right. Yes, 100%. And I think that, like you said, society has so many norms. For example, if you go to like an all adult inclusive, I mean, what is all included? Alcohol, free flowing, have as much as you want. So if you are perhaps wanting to go alcohol free, like you feel like an outsider, you feel like, okay, well, now I'm not normal. You know what I mean? And it's a good thing that there are mocktails out there. But even that is kind of like, you're not really honoring yourself. You're still trying to look like you're fitting in. So, yeah, there's so many
Mhm.
intricate pieces that go into this, and it just messes with your mind.
Yeah, it really does. And I remember in month two when I decided to stop drinking, I actually got a lot of anxiety around how would I go on my vacation without alcohol. And so I had a lot of that. Like, how am I supposed to do this? And there's a lot of growing pains. And just also, if you've been drinking for a really long time, I think it's in a way like normal to have certain emotions, but I didn't have any support in the beginning. And I think getting support, not AA support, because I still don't resonate with calling myself an alcoholic. I will never do that. In my book, I don't ever reference that because it's just not verbiage I personally use. And so for me, though, I did still need to get help with like the mindset, the subconscious. And then the other thing that really, really helped me too was going kind of up the chain. So there's a DILTS model where with change, a lot of people change the environment, the behavior.
Mm.
But he proposes to go up that and change more like purpose, your identity, your values. And then the other things will kind of get better because a lot of us can't change our environment when we stop drinking, right? We can't like cancel the world, our friends, there's lots of things that can't actually change initially. So making things different in your life. So finding, again, living more on purpose, trying more activities, kind of getting the creative juices flowing and doing something like that you wouldn't do if you were drinking. Propose that, like it'll kind of go down that model. And that is kind of what happened to me.
That's powerful. I'm going to have to look into that. I haven't heard that, but I can identify with wanting to change your identity or your purpose or your drive because like you mentioned, and I'm going to echo, yes, sometimes you cannot change your environment. And so
Mhm.
that just makes it even more challenging when you see there's an opportunity for change and you want it, but you have that barrier. Tell me about where you were in your life when you decided that you wanted to give going alcohol free a try. Like, where did that come from? Where was that inspo drawn from?
So the last time, well, so again, I kept getting emotional when I was drinking. And I think it was just like, okay, I have to do something with this. We moved to Florida from Michigan. So I didn't have the exact same people to hang out with. And I still hang out with a lot of those people, but I think it gave me an opportunity to kind of like do this.
Hmm.
And so I decided on my 39th birthday, I'm going to take a break with alcohol. I also really, really got sick of feeling like crap, being hungover. I would get so hungover off, not even off a lot. And so my tolerance was changing. It just really wasn't worth it. So I quit for about 6 months. I listened to an Audible book, This Naked Mind by Annie Grace. It's fantastic. And I was actually blown away. I did not know like alcohol was a class one carcinogen. I didn't know the statistics and the things about alcohol. And I remember thinking, why don't we know this? This is crazy. Because I think it's just like cigarettes. Like people know now it causes cancer. They know it's not healthy for you. Yes, will people still smoke? Sure. But do as many people smoke because they know it's harmful? No, they don't smoke as much. Like it just isn't, it's not such a big thing. But I drank again after 6 months and I convinced myself I was going to moderate. And I really did slow down my drinking. I did not go back to my normal drinking, which was mostly weekends, binge drinking.
Mhm.
But the other thing before I go on with that story is I had a really dysfunctional relationship with food probably my whole life. And, I think I thought when I quit drinking, like my life would become perfect and like everything would be good to go. And it's a lot of work. I can tell you right now, and I never really thought of myself as numbing myself, but like it numbs you. Even if you're not trying to numb yourself, even when you're in habitual drinking on the weekends, it still blocks things, makes healing a little bit harder. It like you mentioned, I know we talked a little bit before, like psychic gifts sometimes can get static. So there's a lot of things that can happen. So for me, moderation did not work ultimately, but moderation was great because what happened was I started becoming mindful of when I was drinking because I didn't drink as much. So I felt the depressant. I felt the effects of alcohol more. And the last time I drank was an epic show. It was date night. It was out with my ex-husband. We went to this wine bar, and I'm sitting here taking pictures of my wine, sending it to my friend. Why? Because I was a people pleaser. I was like, oh, they want me to drink. And no one honestly cared if I drank, honestly. No one cared. No one cared at the end of the day. But I think sometimes when we give up alcohol, we're like, we don't maybe consciously again become aware of it, but like, what would the connection look like with our husbands, our friends? Will no one want to hang out with me? So there's a lot of things that come into play when we are removing alcohol. So that day was very stressful. I had a very stressful day at work. It was bad. I felt very disconnected from my ex-husband. So I became an emotional wreck. I cried for hours and I was conscious. I did not black out, but I couldn't control it. I had no control over it. The next morning I woke up, I felt terrible. I slept awful because again, my tolerance went down and I just felt it more. Like my GI system, my stomach was a mess. So that day I'm like, I'm done drinking. I cannot drink anymore. This was like the tip of the iceberg. I'm like, this isn't going to serve me. It's just proof that I'm meant to stop drinking. And I was taking a walk and I was like really excited about quitting alcohol. And then I heard myself say, and this is how my intuition got like activated, I feel like, because I didn't understand intuition until all these things started happening. I heard myself say, doors will open if you stop drinking alcohol. And it was like, that's my voice. And it was loud. And I was like, whoa, it was cool.
That's amazing. And it's interesting because you felt that there was a pull. You were getting curious about what would my life look like if I stopped. And then it's almost like you had to have that moment of extreme, right? Where your body wasn't feeling it, you weren't feeling great, like the sleep was wrecked. And then to go out on a walk and have that reflection, like, yes, I can see how that was divinely timed for sure.
Yeah, it was really neat. And I honestly decided to go alcohol free really for health, like the health stuff. And I didn't want to feel the shame, the guilt. And again, like not every time I drank was like that. But ultimately, yes, it wasn't worth it. And moderation's very tricky. Like I said, I think if some people can moderate, they can drink from time to time and they can leave it or take it. But when I would drink socially, I would never drink by myself, to be honest with you. It wasn't my thing. But socially, it was hard for me just to stop it. One, it was very difficult. So I think when we look at, do I have to have a problem? I don't know. Is alcohol adding value to your life? To me, yes, it was a problem. It's not healthy to black out. It's not healthy to binge drink. We know it's terrible for your health. So I think in some regards, there's this part where we shame people. You have to be an alcoholic to quit, where why? Like, I wasn't drinking every day. And even if I was, as long as I get help and don't do that, because we see people that have trauma or they get divorced, they weren't maybe huge drinkers, and then all of a sudden something happens and then they're using it. So I think it's just hard to like, I feel like putting everybody in one bucket isn't fair.
I 100% agree with you. And I love that you're raising that awareness via this conversation because it couldn't be more accurate. And I don't think a lot of people recognize that. And so I want to just commend you on saying that and bringing that out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, thank you. And I also want to say, if you keep thinking about not drinking over and over and over again, yes, it's probably causing a problem in your life. We'll call a spade a spade. But also, I always challenge people, what if that's your intuition? I mean, you think about it, alcohol is a toxin. Your body often is your intuitive portal, right? We feel things in our bodies first, and then we logic our way into things sometimes. So we will feel it like, God, I should quit drinking. And then you'll have this other voice that's like, well, you're not that bad. I remember even Googling, am I an alcoholic? Like when I started the blacking out, when it was one summer that it was more than I like to admit. And then I looked at Google and I'm like, well, I don't fit this criteria. But I heard myself say on multiple occasions, maybe I should quit drinking. And then throughout the week, I'm like, I love how I feel. I feel so healthy and great. And that's intuition too, right? Your body, it tells a story. You feel really good. So I think that was really a turning point for me that, like, hey, you wouldn't be thinking these things if there wasn't some validity in the thoughts.
Absolutely. 100%. I feel like when we keep having those thoughts that keep playing on repeat, whether they're loud or just a quiet whisper, they're definitely something to pay attention to for sure. So I'm glad that you did. And then once you became more accustomed, and you said that you haven't drank in over 3 years, did I hear
Yeah.
you correctly?
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about like the after, like there's before alcohol and then there's after alcohol.
Yeah, so it's kind of crazy. I never pictured how my life would have gone. And I think that voice that said doors will open if you stop drinking alcohol, I think we have to always consider two doors, right? One where there's going to be hard stuff and one thing's going to be really amazing. And the hard stuff isn't always bad. It's what's meant to be sometimes. But what happened was I ended up getting, like I said, I got help and it was an online program and talked about purpose. And that's what got me actually thinking about a book. Now, the program in itself didn't tell me to write a book. I started just taking walks and listening to my intuition. And I heard myself say, write a kid's book. And I'm like, huh. And I'm not a writer. Like growing up, I never wanted to write books. It's not something I remember thinking about. But yeah, so I ended up writing two children's books and publishing them myself on Amazon. And that was like 2023. And in 2024, I started my podcast, Soulful and Sober, and I also became an alcohol-free coach. I ended up doing a certificate program and all this stuff so I could coach people and help them not just remove alcohol, but really figure out what makes them happy and more fulfilled. Because we have to, again, like I said, you have to fill the gaps. You cannot just stop drinking and not do anything else. It honestly, probability you'll go back to drinking if you do that, because it's really easy to do that without support and, going a little bit deeper. And then some sad things happened. I got divorced, but really these were things that I think were meant to happen. And I think because I was alcohol free, I just had more clarity and had more growth. And the things that I did not have when I was drinking, I really just just didn't have them. I think I always wanted more, I just didn't know how to get it and didn't know what I wanted. So it was much easier for me to figure out what I wanted. And again, I did not plan to be an alcohol-free coach. I did not plan to do this. And I had to work on myself a lot. The people pleasing, like I said, the FOMO of removing alcohol, the myths that I believed. So I've had to really work on myself and believing in myself. So it's all these things. But again, they wouldn't have happened if I didn't stop drinking. And then I wrote my book, Soul Led Sobriety, in 2024 when I was getting, while I was like, I left my ex. It was very therapeutic. But through that time period, I wrote my book and published it in August of 2025. And I think that's really like amazing too, because I love it and it's just part of my story, but there's teachable moments in it. And then something I really want to note is my son is, like I said, he's 10. And although he's not drinking, and I will never ever shame people for drinking in front of him, but I'm really excited to give him this other side. And also my own transformation and my own healing has helped me become a better mom and help him, whether it's getting him in therapy or helping him navigate different emotions. I feel like it's just easier. I also don't feel like I need to have alcohol at the end of the day. And I also want to plug in real quick that I do not actually think it's the women's fault or anybody's fault for some of these things. Now, I don't condone obviously unsafe behaviors, but we're told these things. So I think, if somebody is at home and like, I feel like I'm drinking every night and what's wrong with me, that like society tells people like this is a coping mechanism. So I think at this end of the day, I don't want people to think like, oh, there's something wrong with me. There's something wrong, I think, with the alcohol industry,
Correct.
to be honest with you.
100%. Before we started recording, we were talking about this. When I was single, going through the aftermath of my divorce and dating, I remember watching this show and, the girls just got together on like a Friday night and that was their thing. Everyone just, have a margarita in hand and that was like the normal. And I also had a coworker who was like Wine Wednesday and like every Wednesday was her night to go home and just drink as much wine as she pleased. And even in that same teaching position also, like we were always out Friday nights for happy hours, like, and we'd be driving
Mhm.
home and going home at like 11 o'clock at night, you know what I mean? Like it just became like a routine because
Mhm.
it's a social thing, it's we're connecting, we're bonding, we're, oh, you're letting your hair down because now you've had 2 shots of tequila. And yeah, it's not always a good look, and it adds so many different layers too. We're like, oh, did we let so and so drive home now? Like, are we, you know what I mean? Like, you have to be
Yep.
responsible for like your friends and your coworkers. And even as I've gotten older, also, yeah, like I can't drink the same way that I did as a kid. Like, I wake up the next morning and I was like, oh my gosh, I've been hit by like a semi truck. You know what I mean? Like, and it's not rewarding, it doesn't feel
Yeah.
good.
No, it doesn't. And I look at like, I talk about the things that I've done since I've stopped drinking in that bucket, right? And then this other bucket is I'm in my 40s and I'm starting to see hormone doctors. And I started learning about what alcohol does to your hormones and estrogen, and it messes with menopause. And also, your estrogen helps your cardiovascular system
Oh,
and
wow.
it gets severely decreased with alcohol. So I think, and then obviously, I know this is a little bit out there, but it increases breast cancer chances. So all these things as a woman, like, and I mean, the list goes on, like bone health and all these things, alcohol really disrupts. I think it's really important for women to be informed of this. So, I think there's two buckets, right? Because we need information, but sometimes it's not enough and it's nothing. And I think this just goes into seeing like it's even if we're smart and we're educated and we know all the things, which I don't think everyone knows all the things because we're never told all the things. um we don't know. I don't think a lot of people know how bad alcohol is for us. And then there's this other bucket. What do you want to do with your life and what makes you happy? So I think that like you almost need to have education and you almost need this other part of you that helps with like your purpose, your mindset, your fulfillment, because you need that too. Because some people, the health stuff is not enough. They need this other part as well. They need to know the education, they need to know the bad things, but they need the also the other part to understand why. it's hard to stop drinking because I knew at that point it was bad. The estrogen and all those things I didn't really know until later. And I'm really thankful because now I don't have to deal with that
Mhm.
and figuring out like the cart before the horse, like what exactly what's contributing to my issues. Is it my drinking or is it something else? And now I know, okay, it's not the drinking. So I think that's important. But I also think, again, talking about this other component, because some people will tell me, I know it's so bad for me, but why do I keep going back to it? I'm so confused. And there's this other part that it's like, okay, this is why. Like, it's your nervous system, it's the things you've been taught over and over again. And we have to also say that childhood and other mindset stuff goes into this. Not that your childhood necessarily makes you drink, but once you stop drinking, I'm telling you, there's like things that will happen that will get brought up that you're not going to expect. Some things you'll expect, like, okay, I know I'm going to want to drink at this time, but that's why getting support is really helpful. So when you're wrestling with that, you can go, what's wrong with me? I suck. I can't get this under control. And then you have that emotion to do on top of the other one. So I just want to put a plug in there that it's important to look at both coins because not everybody can just look at like the health benefits. That's not enough for some people.
100%, because look at how many warnings there are out there on everything. It's funny because what it's reminding me of is two things. One, I spoke to someone who lives outside of America, and she was like, I think it's so funny that your commercials say, you know, XY medication, and then it lists all of the negative side effects. Apparently, like that's not a thing in other countries. So it's like, even with like alcohol or smoking or, anything that they say is not good for you, red dye 40, all of the health risks, but you're right. Sometimes it's not enough. And it's curious that you mentioned that alcohol is a carcinogen because I don't think I've ever heard that. And
Hmm.
I
Class one
and I
carcinogen.
use that, like I talk about like that. Like I was just talking to my husband last night about hot dogs and how they're so unhealthy for you. And I use the word carcinogen. And so it's like, how am I this age? And I'm just learning this. That's sad, and like you said, like we're a bit controlled as to what information we get as a society. And because you're a mom also, you can relate to this. Like I really dislike shows that are geared toward teenagers or young adults, and it's just like party after party after party, and it's like glorified that the partying is the
Yeah,
way to, and it's like I don't want my children to think that like they have to do that in order to fit in and be a good person. So, I mean, hopefully having conversations like this raises more awareness and it helps to just reflect on the choices that we make. And I think also one last thing I want to bring up is getting that support. I think when you have a goal towards finding your purpose or working toward a goal, that can be very motivational. And like you said, if you were to just take something away, what do you then replace it with? You don't want to go from one addiction to another.
absolutely. And, you know, I had all these amazing things happen and I started manifesting things that I actually genuinely want, like really wanted. The other thing too is in 2025, when you speak of other addictions, I had this food thing my whole life. It wasn't caused by alcohol. I just, in my mind, like I said, I thought alcohol would cure all my things and my life would be perfect. It doesn't work that way, but it helps you figure out what you need to do and what direction you need to go in. So I stopped dieting in 2025 and I actually got help for that too because for me it's like okay, I still go to food or I do this. I want freedom. So I think it's really good that you brought that up because sometimes people do go to other things and it's just learning about again your nervous system and we having awareness of why we do what we do is really like huge. It's fundamental.
Yeah, I hear you on that for sure. And I think for me, when I was going through my divorce and when I was having that glass of wine, two things went through my head. It's like, okay, I'm drinking alone. And because I feel like addiction runs in my family, I was very scared of the path that I could go down. And so thankfully I had enough. And it was intuition for sure. For sure. It was like, why are you doing this? Let's not do this. And it was that
Yeah.
whisper, that reminder of you're taking this too far and there are better ways to cope with this. And finally, thank goodness, I was like, yes, you're right. Let's not go down this path and open a new doorway of trouble, in what I felt like it could be a bad situation if I continue to help myself to whine.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, because I just mentioned it, I'd love to hear a little bit more about you said that once you went alcohol free that your manifestations began to come alive quicker or faster. You felt more in alignment. I want to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, like I said, in 2022, I wrote in my journal for manifestation, I want to change my relationship with alcohol. And I didn't really know what that was going to look like, but I knew I needed to change. So that was in 2022 of January. I quit drinking in November of 22 that year. But what was cool in 2023, I did write like to find more purpose because I think that was really intriguing to me. There was something, like I said, missing in my life, and I didn't really understand it. But then the whole book thing happened. And it wasn't so much like every year I put all these things and every single thing happened. It was more that like I was doing things that brought me joy and satisfaction. And when I look at manifestation, it's sometimes manifesting like a feeling, like having peace, like happiness, alignment. It's not always like I have to have this thing to make me happy. Because as you know, I mean, because you obviously do a lot with manifestation, will it make you happy? Like you have to be happy first inside. So I've had to work a lot on that too. And even though it's not something I necessarily manifested, it was something and I still work on it today, is believing in myself. And I think that's like the biggest thing is believing I can do all these things. And what's funny is I had this intuition journal where I'd write like random things I would think about. I had the book title of my book before I wrote my book, before I even did anything with it. Soul-Led Sobriety. I said I want it to be a purple book. And actually, it's funny, I have it here. And like it's you can't see it
I
probably
love it.
very
I
good.
was
I
just
have
looking
like
at it. I
yeah,
was
I have
looking at
like
it.
there we go, it's a little
Beautiful.
bit better. So like I had purple book, and in my mind I had a different idea of how I wanted to do it. And then I changed it because I worked with a company to keep me accountable to write my book. So and then this hasn't happened yet, but I believe it will. In 2023, I had a meditation and I saw myself signing books and going on stage. Yeah. So, but I'm like, it has to happen. I saw all these things before they happened. And yes, not everything's happening right this second. And that's okay. But I think I feel more fulfilled than I ever did when I was drinking. And, obviously I won't go in massive depth, but I also was very disconnected with my ex-husband. And I think I didn't want to really address that.
Mm.
And I think at some point, removing alcohol helped me get to this point where I'm just happier.
Yeah, I hear
So
you.
it's really neat though. But I said, I think the clarity and realizing I was also trying to manifest things that I didn't really want, that didn't really fulfill me, that I was just checking boxes, doing things, not connected with myself.
Mm.
And I think the biggest thing with that is, as we know, intuition is if we're drinking all the time and doing drugs and doing all the things, it's really hard to connect with
Yeah.
ourselves. And you don't need like a, 13-hour practice for your intuition to work. But if you're not present, you're thinking about your hangover. I would wake up some Monday so inflamed and like make myself work out, take me, a couple days to feel normal. And and really at that point, then we get the weekend and then we do it all over again. We're like, where's the time to know what the heck you want?
Yeah, 100%. And in most books that you read about techniques on how to manifest or even meditate, like they usually say make sure that you are drug or alcohol free for 24 hours before like attempting this. So right there is the proof in the pudding, that it really does disconnect you from your intuition. And so if you are trying to get more in touch with yourself, your life's purpose, your intuition, then you're going to have a little bit of a harder time with that, and then also, like you said, we're getting older. And so inflammation can be a thing and perimenopause and all of that. It's like, like we don't need to compile on the problem, you know?
Oh my gosh, 100%. And then I was reading that women experience things different than men, but it's also shown that mental health gets affected differently than men. So we have more like depression, anxiety. I mean, if you think about it too, is, alcohol destroys your REM sleep, and even small amounts. So if you don't get REM sleep, you're not going to feel the best tomorrow. Your patience might be lower with your kids or with people around you at your job. And then it increases your cortisol. So it makes your stress hormone increase. And then you have to like look at hormones in general. You have like your hunger hormones, all these things get affected. And then your GABA, your serotonin. So really, if you think about it that way, it's like a cocktail of hell.
It's funny in a sad way.
Yeah. But I mean, like I said, it's not like everyone knows all this stuff. And I think that just educating yourself, but those that are drawn to intuition, manifestation, I always say that you're drawn to this for a reason. If you can look at like the pretend like this isn't a problem, pretend like this is a normal, healthy thing to do for yourself. And if we can look at it that way, which I know it's a culture shift, but this is really healthy. And, you're led here for a reason. I'm so happy to not be drinking with my son, and I'm so happy to be present. I'm so happy that this isn't part of my life, that my weekends are not draining and shitty. It's just so nice. So there's so many benefits to it, and everything has a domino effect. And so that's, I think, really important as well. And when you realize you don't need alcohol to do the things you want to do, to connect with people, to go vacations, you know, to seek relief, like it's a superpower. I did not coin that. Brene Brown coined that. So she said sobriety is a superpower.
It's so ironic that you mentioned Brene Brown because I was just looking at my bookshelf yesterday and like I was just staring at her book and I was like, I should pick that one up again. So that's really funny. I might have to actually do it. It could be a sign, right?
Maybe, maybe.
You also mentioned that going alcohol free helped you rebuild your self-trust. Would you mind talking about that journey for you?
Yeah. So for me, I really didn't trust myself. I sought external validation. I was a big people pleaser, like I mentioned earlier. So when I started to remove alcohol, I would almost like look for people's validation that I'm doing the right thing. And from the wrong people, people supported me, but like they can't. I'm telling you right now, the thing that we should not do is ask people that are still drinking for
Of
validation.
course.
Unless somebody is like a severe alcohol use and someone's like, yeah, you should definitely not drink.
Right, right.
You're looking outside yourself. So I was looking outside myself a lot and not inside myself. And this is still something, even today I work on, not with drinking, but in my business. And it's just something that I'm like, God, I must have learned this somewhere in my childhood. I'm not going back and diagnosing myself, but it's something that I have awareness of. So when it comes up where I'm like wanting to make myself feel better by maybe scrolling or doing something external, it's reminding myself to go inward. So I really just believed I didn't believe I did any of this stuff when I was drinking, but it kept me so disconnected. So my trust really did start coming back when I started having all these like kind of intuitive things happen to me, and I felt really good and I felt really happy.
Mhm.
So I think that it just took time. And also, again, this trust was through lots of like activities and pushing myself a little bit outside of my comfort zone. I remember there was a point in my business where I was like, "Ugh, I kind of want to quit everything. This is so hard." And I realized in my past, I would quit things that were too hard. And mind you, like I've gone, not that this means someone's smart by any means. I'm not trying to say that if people go to college or don't, but I'm a successful person. So like it's not that I, just quit everything, but I quit things that probably would have brought me joy, like theater and different things that would have made me happy because I was scared I'd fail. So I think it was like there was like a lot of aha moments where, oh, that makes sense. And honestly, just try, and this is again still something I work on, sitting down and trying to feel how things feel in my body and trusting that I'll make the best decision. And even if I make a decision that I'm like, I don't know, sitting with and be like, okay, well, now I made this decision. I'm going to learn from it and I'm going to get something out of this decision. So I think it's just how we look at things. And for me, I had a lot of self doubt about myself. And I just don't think I had an understanding of it until I stopped drinking.
Yeah, because it's almost like you're removing the potential blinders that you have on and you're seeing things more clearly. It's when like you're trying to drive your car and the windshield is getting foggy and you turn the defroster on and things begin to get clearer. So you removed
Yeah.
like, that piece that was holding you back from really putting everything together and seeing things in a broader, clearer perspective. So I can see how that would improve everything, your self trust, your decisions, your desire to want to pursue new opportunities. Where's your passion and all of that? So, where are you now? What lights you up? What do you do during the day as your career? Where are you with your passions and what you offer? Because you're also a coach as well, correct?
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about like where you're at and what you offer and all of the things that really light you up. I'm curious, how did you go from realizing like Mayday, something needs to change to, like you just said, there's days when you're just so happy and so full of joy. Tell me a little bit about that path for you.
Yeah. So I think the whole contribution thing is really cool. And I really like public speaking and doing things like this on the podcast. I think it's just, I love it. It's just kind of like my zone of genius. So for me, it was like the coaching component is really, really cool because I think, and I've done therapy before. I'm a licensed social worker. I don't work under my social work license in coaching because they're fundamentally different.
Mhm.
But I think with coaching, it's cool because you've been where someone's been to some degree, right? And so you can understand it in that perspective. And so I think for me, that's really cool. And I do some individual, I do more group coaching now just because it's, with working full time and then doing this as well, it makes the most sense. But I love it. And I like seeing what people want to do other than drinking. Granted, they have to go, there's different phases we go through, but I think that is really exciting because seeing people quit their jobs, they're like, realize that like they can be there for their kids differently. There's been so many light bulbs and their life is fundamentally changed. So it's really neat. And I didn't know, like I said, I never expected to coach, write a book, or do anything like this. So that's been really neat. So yeah, I love it. And like I said, I'm hoping to do public speaking in the future. I'm going to probably put my book on Audible. I have to figure that component out. And it's like trying to also balance all this with being a full-time worker too, right? I've had to be like, okay, what's realistic? That's why for me, I like doing group. And I think there's a benefit of group. I did group and it was awesome. But yeah, like even with my coaching, I do things right now. I'm getting an intuitive coaching certificate. And then I'm also just finishing, it's called Make Peace with Food. So I can help people with emotional eating and then hypnotherapy as well. And I don't know how I'm going to integrate all this in, but yeah, I really like it. I think it's fun. And I don't know what will happen with this because I don't have enough information. But in my little notebook, I wrote that I've thought on numerous occasions about opening my own place, like a brick and mortar, but I'm not sure.
We're just putting it out there and seeing what happens,
Yep.
what
Yep.
opportunities come knocking, and if it's aligned and it meant to be, it will happen. I can totally visualize you on stages and sharing your voice, and we teach what we learn. So we have to go through things, whether it's our relationship with alcohol, with food, with fill in the blank, right? We have to go through those things so that we have the knowledge and the compassion and the empathy to relate to the person that we're trying to help, putting out our hand to help them up. Pretty
Absolutely.
awesome that you have all those things in the works, that you're like a little
Yes.
hypnotherapy, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Like it's like you're your chef in your own kitchen and you don't know where it's going to bring you. And I
Yeah.
love that you also have a manifesto. Do you do that once a year or is that something that you sit down regularly and you put down like, because I've done that before, like a future me letter or, in 3 years, this is my vision.
Yeah. So every once in a while I do it. There's like a website actually, Benjamin Hardy. And in one of his books, he has this like website. It's like a future you. You can actually write yourself a letter. But the manifestation thing, each year I write things down. But I sometimes even like I kind of go back and forth on it. But the letter thing is cool because you can just write like whatever. One thing I caught myself one year, I'm like, I was really focused on money. That's not right. So like it was kind of interesting because I've changed so much, like how I look and view at things. But they say that if we write things down, we're more apt to do it. And so I think the research says that.
Yeah, it
So
does.
Yeah, and I think whether or not everything happens, I think we always have to remember, and you'll understand this, but like it's not just us in the pot. Like we have our spirit guides, God or source or the universe, whatever people relate to. You might want to do something, but like Gabby Bernstein says, it's this or something better. So even though you want to do this one thing, maybe there's just like this better thing. I actually thought of my kids' books. I was like, I want to get an agent. And then I got sick of doing it and didn't feel aligned. I was making myself like write these agents because I wanted to become a traditional published author at that time. And I'm like, I don't even feel aligned with this. And then I told myself, you can quit this. Like, you don't have to do this. And so I think it's sometimes, again, listening to yourself, like, what do you want versus what like the outside world wants. And I think it's just fun to do these things. It's fun to dream big and it's fun to think about, wow, I really want this. And then how do you get it? And realizing that we don't have to get everything, all the things all the time in one swoop. But I think if we don't think about the things we want, we don't dream big, then who's going to do it for us?
I totally support what you're saying there. We have to dream big for ourselves and then also put it down and see what is presented to us. Because again, sometimes God, universe, source has a bigger plan for us, and maybe our dreams aren't big enough. So I also want to point out that, again, you did it yourself when you were saying, like, you know what, this doesn't feel good to me, and you shifted gears. So I think, again, your intuition is strong and on point. And also with that, it's recognizing the feelings. If something is aligned for you, it lights you up, it makes you feel good. You can feel joy or pride. And when you start to feel those icky feelings of like, why am I doing this? That is definitely like a little bit of a yield sign, like, let's get a little bit deeper with this and let's explore why. Maybe it's the methodology that you're using, or maybe it's not the thing. Maybe it's supposed to be a pivot, and it's really powerful, a powerful lesson that you're sharing with everybody in really tuning in and listening to those whispers, listening to that voice or that message that keeps coming back to you. Speaking of intuition, because I have taken mediumship courses and whatnot, and what is your clair? Do you just hear like the little messages in your mind? Is that what it sounds like? Because before you mentioned like it sounded like me, but it wasn't me. Like, how did that come through for you? How does your intuition usually work for you?
That doesn't always happen. I guess the top three. Clear audience, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Not always though.
Mm-hmm.
And then clear cognizances. I'll sometimes see things in meditations, but I don't see like auras or things like that. And then sometimes it's just a knowing. That happens though, like I have to like be really present with myself and really high vibe. Otherwise, it's very hard for me to access that one. When I used to do therapy, I would like just know things about people when they would talk about things, but I would never tell them because it was not appropriate at all. But
Mm.
yeah, like there's just sometimes things I would just know. So those, I mean, and then the other one, actually probably have all of them.
Right?
We do have them all, but like
Yes.
I'm not,
Which ones are
to be honest with
activated?
you, yeah, I'm not sure which one's the strongest. I kind of go back and forth. It depends. The other thing too is when I talk to people, I can feel goosebumps sometimes when they're talking, which that's a more of a somatic experience. But yeah, hearing things, that's probably my top one. I do think so, if I quiet myself enough.
Yeah. Well, sometimes I find that they're intrusive, not in a bad way, but sometimes, even if I'm not quiet, I get this little high pitched sound in my ear. And that usually is my like, hey, pay attention. And I was like, oh, sometimes I was laughing because with my husband, I'd be like, when I get that sound, I'm just like, shh. Like I say shh to him, like I'm like, be quiet. This is more important. Like, I'm sure it takes a lot of energy for our spirit team to like get our attention when we're not
Yeah.
actively in receptive mode. So I love that. What are your children's books about? I'm just curious.
Oh, yeah. So the first one is called Miranda Learns the Art of Not Fitting In. So she's just a little girl that switches schools and she learns that trying to fit in with people that don't make her happy, they're mean, she doesn't like it. And then also trying different things like certain sports and things that don't make her happy. And she finally finds something that does make her happy and it actually brings her friends too. So it's just really about, again, not fitting in and doing what makes you actually happy. The second book is Hudson Learns the Art of Not Giving Up, and that's my son. And it's about his skating adventure. He tried to roller skate and wanted to quit, got upset, the normal things,
Mhm.
people do. But as of today, he's able to roller skate without his trainer. So I wrote the book about him, and it was cute
Awesome.
because he was embarrassed at first because he's, a kid.
Yeah.
And then he's like, can you read it to me? When he was starting to get back into skating, I'm like, oh my gosh, don't get old. I like writing kids' books too. I think, like, again, they both have good messages, more probably on like the mental health. But again, Hudson Love's Yard of Not Giving Up, it's about resilience and also realizing we all aren't good at everything and we have to take practice, because he would compare himself to other people. He's comparing himself to like these people that clearly have been skating for multiple years.
Mhm.
And,
Right.
and so I think it's interesting as a parent to watch what happens and
Yeah.
to teach them, and they're gonna have to work through some of this themselves, of course, but like to be instrumental in navigating that a little bit and letting them process their own emotions, but also knowing that, like, don't give up because it's hard, I mean, like, and I told him, I go, you had a hard time riding your bike and now you can ride your bike. You'll learn the skill. It's just,
Yeah.
I think we want to learn it by like tomorrow. And I think realizing that the things we want, with anything, with adults too, the things we want sometimes don't just come to us just like that. It takes time, and, and we just keep pursuing what we're doing and not give up on what makes us really happy.
Yeah. 100%. Well, I love that you wrote a children's book about your son. That is something really badass, to be honest, and something that he will really see the value in, even, in the future, if and when he ever becomes a parent himself, like how special and precious that is. And it's honestly just really, really inspiring that you did that and that you followed your heart and you made it happen. And so I want to just say that's really cool. So, wrapping up this beautiful conversation, I want to ask you to share where my listeners can connect with you, where they can find your book, and where they can also learn more about coaching with you.
Yeah, so my book is called Soul-Led Sobriety. It's on Amazon. I am going to one day put it on Audible because I like listening to things on Audible. You can find me on, really, Instagram's like the best spot, but I'm on Facebook. I'm on TikTok too, if people like TikTok. But my main platform is Instagram, and it's my name. It's at Chrissy Janiga. And then my website, which it's getting transferred over, so bear with me. But I can share with you too my Awakened Without Alcohol workbook too. So people, if they want to get a free resource, but you can always message me on Instagram. I'm always happy to talk to people, just if they ever want or need support.
I love that. And I will absolutely put all of your contact information and your free offer in the show notes. And honestly, you know what? I would encourage you, if you're listening and you want to reach out to Chrissy, I would, because that's how this conversation happened. So I am so blessed and thankful that I was able to have this conversation with you. Not only did you inspire me, but you also informed me. Like, I learned some things today, and that is pretty cool in itself. So I want to thank you so much for your time. And I cannot wait to see you and hear about you on stage, whether it's this year or next. I know it's going to happen, and I'm so excited for you.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for having me. This was so nice.
You're so welcome.